Welcome to Two Deep, Hokies Under the Influence, a Sons of Saturday podcast. My name is Pete B, and I'm your host. And if you're watching on YouTube, I've got someone special here with me. I've got the head brewer of Commonwealth Brewing, Jeramy Biggie, here with me. We're on location at his tap room in Fairfax. Jeremy, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Well, I shouldn't thank you for being here. This is your place. Thank you for letting me be here.
You're welcome.
But I'm excited about this. We've been talking about this for a little while. Been trying to do some more of these on location things and letting our listeners learn a little bit about the brewing process and beer, and Jeremy's the perfect guy to have as our first guest.
Awesome. I'm excited you guys are here.
First, some just quick news and notes before we get to the interview with Jeremy. I'm going to have Ed Williams come on the show later, talk a little basketball. And then finally, at the end of the show, we're going to do a little bit of two Dans. We got Treadmill Horse, Dan number 1, and we got Dan from Tales of the Terrordome, which is Dan number 2. So we got them both sliding through later in the show. But for now, our Hokie women, they are just 2 days away from Selection Sunday, determining if they will host or not. And that's a big day for them. The men were knocked out of the ACC tournament. We're not doing a pregame show for the semifinals. We were hoping that'd be the case, but that's not it. Wrestling, all 10 of our guys that we had talked about potentially going to nationals, all of them are in. They all made the cut. All 3 of the guys that were on the bubble got an at-large bid. And then finally, football. Spring practice started today. And so that's a major reason I wanted to do this podcast today, and a reason that we're having both Dan's, Treadmill and Terrordome, on the show. I also wanted to ask the listeners for some likes. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead, hit the like button. You don't got to smash it or anything like that. If you want to subscribe, that'd be great. But make sure you like the video if you enjoyed Two Deep Podcast. It will help us immensely down the road. For now, I'm going to start with an introduction question for Jeremy. We've got a couple of his beautiful-looking beers here on the table. We'll start with the basics. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the brewing industry?
Sure. I'm a structural engineer, originally from North Carolina, and I moved to Virginia for a job designing nuclear submarines, believe it or not. I discovered home brewing as a hobby. When I met my now wife, her mother actually bought me a Father's Day present one day. It was a homebrew kit. This is a long time ago, 15 years ago now. And I immediately fell in love with the concept and began avidly brewing all different styles. Took over my house with all the equipment and everything else. So it just kind of snowballed from there. But there was a long gestation period of learning and kind of passively just researching it. And ultimately, it culminated in me deciding with my wife to take a huge leap and start a commercial brewery. And it's done well. We're about 9 years old now, and it's off to the races.
Yeah, you founded this place in 2015, the same year that we started Two Deep. And I'll keep harping on the fact that we're the longest running Hokies podcast. But what made you go with the name Commonwealth? I know you were telling me earlier you name all of your beers, but naming the brewery, it's a big deal. Were there some names that got left on the cutting room floor? And I'm just going to adjust your mic.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, so naming the brewery was like one of the most stressful things I had done up to that point. I spent months and months thinking about it, believe it or not. Went through probably 100 different types of names. Commonwealth came to me at the 11th hour, believe it or not. And when it did, I knew immediately that it was the name I wanted. And I began to research it immediately. And I found that it was available, which was unbelievable that it was available. So there's a funny story of my wife was going to bed, 10:30 at night. And I was in one of my manic phases trying to name the beer. And so I started researching. I wasn't getting anywhere. I had several drinks, had several more. Still not getting anywhere, just kind of panicking. How am I going to start this thing? I need a name. And and it finally came to me, Commonwealth. I loved it because I wanted the brewery to be fresh and have a foot forward in the younger audience. But I also knew Virginia, and I wanted to have that classic name that really spoke to who we are as a state. And I thought, what better combination than to do that? So I came up with the names at some point, like 2 or 3 in the morning, and then I, of course, immediately began to worry that I wouldn't be able to trademark the name. So I went to the USPTO site. I watched videos on how to trademark, and I trademarked it. And then I came to my wife at 5 in the morning, got into bed, and said, "I'm going to go to work late tomorrow, babe."
But did you have, like, was there a close second, or do you not want to say?
It's too embarrassing to say, to be honest with you.
Okay, that's fine. We had some close seconds for the name of our podcast, so I understand maybe not wanting to put them out there. But this is going to be a little bit broad because I want to ask you about the brewing process. But when you started this and wanted to make a beer that you thought could be better than the next guys, what was your approach? What did you want to focus on? And what's your approach now in terms of how you come up with the beers that you make? Is there something that you always stick by?
So I think the origin story is the passion centered around Belgian sour beer, fruited sours in particular. I encountered those, fairly late in my home brewing effort, and I was blown away by how delicious it was, and I was romanced by the kind of vintner influence with the long barrel aging, that kind of thing, slow aging a beer for a year or more, and then bottling it, bottle conditioning it, and then finally getting to sample it maybe a year, maybe 2 years after you've brewed it. And trying to, remember or look back at your notes about what you actually did. I just fell in love with that part. So that was the start. From there, it was like, jumping on a roller coaster and taking off. The hazy beer scene took off, and lagers have always been something I've loved as well. So it's hard to answer that question. I've had influences from everything. My travels, the food I've had, beers I've had, over the course of my life. And I really try to pull from everything. And I think my guiding focus is to create the best experience I possibly can. And I trust my own palate, and I trust the palate of my team, in particular, my new head brewer, who's employee number 2 and has worked with me from the beginning, George Bauman. He's got a palate that's similar to mine, and we can riff off of each other's really well. And it's made, we've been able to make some really amazing styles. We've made every style I can honestly think of, we've done. And the goal is just to make it as good a beer as it possibly can be. And if we do the work and we taste it and it's not up to standard, or it just doesn't quite express like we want, we try it again.
See, I like the way you said that, because sometimes when you drink a beer that you just pick up from the store or whatever, you think, oh, they didn't work very hard on this one. Or that's not what's happening here. You're putting a lot of thought and love into each and every beer.
Absolutely.
And that's appreciated. Now, and maybe this kind of cancels that question out, but when you're thinking of a new beer to make, does it ever depend on the ingredients you have available? Or do you like, oh no, I want to make this beer, I'll go to Germany and get those hops and whatever? Like, how does that work? Like,
well, fortunately, most things are available to us these days. I mean, obviously during COVID, everyone was restricted, but before and after COVID, things have opened up. You can get access to anything if you really want it and you really need it. So we don't. I generally I think from an inspiration perspective, like I'm inspired by a street drink that I had in Korea, or I've had a cocktail at a really nice bar and restaurant, and so I try to make that and make it the best I possibly can. So it's always that inspiration.
That's interesting, and you do have a very eclectic tap list, and that's one thing that differentiates Commonwealth.
Sure.
How do you go about building out that tap list? Like, is it regimented? Like, oh, IPAs are in right now, we've got to have 10 IPAs, we've got to have 5 stouts. Like, how do you go about building it out?
Yeah. I think a lot of breweries are very regimented and plan months and months out. I do not. I'm about 30 to 45 days, at most 60 out at any one point. And the reason for that is I like to be spontaneous. I like to respond to what's going on in the world. I like to react to new flavors that I'm tasting, on my own adventures. And I want to be as creative as possible and as diverse as possible. So I don't take that approach, to the great frustration of many distributors that work with us. But I think I think it creates the best experience for our customers.
Yeah. Do you brew any beers year round?
We do. We have a set of flagship IPAs and stouts and a saison
Flagship
and lagers that we do year round. It's probably around 6 or 8 at this point. So we definitely do. Wapatuli IPA is it was a homebrew recipe I used to make, and we translated it to the beer. It's since changed even more, but it's like a standard bearer for us. There's also Big Poppy. We have the Wealth Saison. Marvalo is an oatmeal stout that's super chocolatey and rich. We love. And then Oriole, our lager.
Is that what you're drinking right now? What are you having right now?
I'm actually having our Easy Lager right now. It's just
Easy Lager. Okay. I am drinking the Crisper Boy. And when I turned to Jeremy, I was like, oh, it's a Crispy Boy, like a light beer. He's like, no, it's a single IPA. And if you guys listen to the podcast, you know I'm a big fan of my 6 to 7.5% IPAs. I like doubles, but as I get more advanced in age, I tend to like singles that have a lot of good flavor. And I feel like this Crisper is doing it. Can you tell us a little bit about this one?
Sure. Crisper Boy is a pretty funny name concept that we came up with. Everyone's familiar with CRISPR, the gene editing tool. There was a yeast strain that had been genetically modified to create better esters and more of a fruit forward flavor and aroma. And we were experimenting with it. And that's one of the few that I haven't named. Gio, my buddy, actually came up with a joke. We should name it CRISPR Boy, BOI. And I started laughing out loud, and I was like, that's definitely going to be the name of this beer. And
you talked about core beers. What's your favorite style of beer to brew? Like, if you were like, I know I can make this beer absolutely outstanding, what's that style?
I think in the beginning it would have been a true Belgian sour that was long-term aged and fruited.
Now, for our listeners, a Belgian sour, is that a Beerliner Weiss, or is that?
Oh no, the Berliner Weiss is a German style.
German style, sour. Yes.
No, this is in the Belgian tradition.
What would give us an example of?
Well, like taking an Ode Brune, for example. So like a high gravity brown ale or something like that, and putting it in, brewing it, and we tend to do a base stainless ferment, and then we push it into barrels that have been used for various wines, white or red, and we add souring bacteria and yeast and let it age for an extended period. If it's a lighter colored beer, it'd be like 6 months. If it's a darker colored beer, we tend to go for a year to 18 months. And then from there, we sample the beers out of the barrels, pull nails, taste it, create a blend that we like, and then put that back in the tank, add fruit, and let that re-ferment. Then when that's done, we're bottling it and on priming sugar so that it can bottle condition. And so all told, that process becomes, can be easily 2 years. And it's just a beautiful thing when you finally get to chill that down
that process
and drink it.
That's what drives you.
It's the most romantic thing in the industry for me. So.
And you were telling me, and I think I had been promoting this as I'm going to have the head brewer on. Jeremy kind of pulled the rug out. He said he just promoted a guy, which you did reference. But you were talking about how you have to baby those casks when you're the head brewer. It's 8 hours. You can't go away from the situation.
So any brewer knows this, that when you start your brew day, you're tied to that machine. You're working for the full day, 8, 9, 10 hours, depending on what it is. And it could go even longer if it's a double mash or you're doing a long boil down. So it can be intense and it makes for long days on your feet. for me, having a team that I trust, that understands my palate and really responds well to instruction and to feedback, it's been amazing. It's allowing us to expand. I'm stoked for my team.
Yeah, and I wanted to piggyback on that question I asked you about styles of beer. Oh, since 2015, we're talking about the 9 years. Is there a favorite beer that you've brewed, and is it on tap right now, or is it something that you did years back?
So that's a really hard question, but the one
it's like asking your favorite child, right? Like that's tough.
The one I'll give you today is Grodziskie that we did.
What's it called?
Grodziskie. It's a Polish smoke lager.
Okay.
And it's an amazing beer because it's really low ABV.
Okay.
It's made with 100% smoked wheat malt. We named it Puff for that reason. And it's just like this really simple beer. And when you hear smoked wheat malt in a lager, you don't think that's going to be delicious.
Yeah,
but it actually is so delicious, and it adds a complexity to any food you're having in the summertime. It's almost my favorite beach beer, believe it or not. And people are gonna roll their eyes when they hear that. But
what's the color like when it comes out?
Very, very clear, very pale yellow.
Okay.
And very effervescent. Huge head retention because wheat has so many of those dextrins that can really help create that. So you're just getting a super refreshing low ABV, so you can have many of them if you want, and it really accentuates the food.
I want to talk trends with you quickly, and I think everyone that goes to breweries regularly knows that it's always an explosion of IPAs, and that is one of the nice things about Commonwealth is that they have so many more things than just a long list of IPAs. But what trends do you see emerging right now? I know a couple years ago, black IPAs were coming in. Maybe like the German Pilsners and some of that kind of stuff was coming back, making a resurgence. What trends are you seeing right now in the beer industry?
I mean, I think everyone's seeing that lagers are coming back into play. They never left, honestly, but they're coming more to the forefront as people are looking for things that are more drinkable. That are more sessionable, and people have a greater degree of health consciousness, I think, today than they did maybe a few years ago. So that's not to diminish the double IPA or anything like that, because those are still the best sellers. But German lagers, Czech lagers, those are some of the real interesting.
I love those beers, and honestly, any real beer lover, we got started drinking light beer and in college or whatever else. And sometimes it's nice to be able to have more than 2, more than 3. And that's hard with the double IPA. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate the fact that the lagers are making a comeback.
Yeah, I do too. And that's why I like Puff so much, is because you've got a low ABV package that has so much flavor.
Yeah.
And I think that is a beautiful expression and shows a real brewing skill when you can do that.
Yes. How do you guys, is there a research arm of Commonwealth, or is that you?
You're looking at it.
Okay. So, how do you stay ahead of that curve? Are you researching breweries overseas, across the country? Is it just what comes to your mind? How do you?
We get invited to a lot of festivals, both around the country and internationally. And fortunately, we're able to attend a lot of them. So you do just naturally get a sense of what's going on in the industry as you walk around and try things during the fest. And it's also just amazing to meet customers internationally.
Yeah, it's got to be awesome.
We were in a festival in Poland recently. It was not a place I would have expected to go, but it was a fantastic time. So cool. And
I do want to ask you about collaboration later. That would probably be in the U.S., but go on.
Sure. Just found some delicious beers there and some amazing breweries, and we're following that up with a trip this spring to Europe for 2 weeks, and going to fit in about 7 different collabs all over Europe. So really excited for that.
Nice. On the topic of trends and staying ahead of the curve, all that good stuff, where do you see brewing heading in the next couple of years? Is it still IPA dominant, or is there something new coming? A consolidation, perhaps, because we know anyone in any small town across America probably has a brewery right now. I think I saw, maybe it was a year or 2 ago now, that we have the most breweries in the U.S. that we've had since Abraham Lincoln was president or something. Yeah. So how do you see it going forward? Is it going to be harder for upstarts to compete, or do you think there's more room for everyone? Or and in terms of the beer, like I said, IPA dominant still?
Well, there's more. So there's more breweries now than Prohibition. Prohibition was the last time America had so many, and now I think we're easily 1,000 plus over that. Don't quote me, but it's kind of insane, and they're opening all the time. I would say that there is room for more breweries in the sense that if they're controlling their expectations, as a craft brewery, if you're trying to create a great experience and a great environment for your local community, and by local I mean like a 5-mile radius,
right?
Then you can do that, and you're going to be able to do that, this year, next year, 10 years from now. But if you're trying to be, a grocery store shelf, massive distributed brewery, that regional, national, that kind of thing, you're going to find it extremely challenging. There's just a massive amount of competition. There's a lot of entrenched players in the distribution market. And so I would recommend, and I think the public would rather that anyone starting a new brewery focus on creating the experience in their local space, and they'll succeed.
That's the thing I love about breweries in general. And like our town in Jersey has a small brewery, but it creates a real sense of community. And that's probably a big reason you wanted to start it in the first place.
It is. It was one of the major reasons. I mean, aside from, I love being able to create something and then see people enjoy it. Like, I think throughout my career, that's been my guiding passion. But when I met my wife, she was studying in Germany. And I met her she was taking a quick vacation to Virginia Beach to visit family. And I met her there, and we kind of fell in love. And then she went back to Germany, like literally 2 months later, and went back to school. And so that Christmas, I came to visit her, and she took me to all the beer gardens, and I got to see, the European beer hall culture, and watch families and old people, young people, all gathering around and drinking just really delicious lager mostly. And great food, and just having the best time of their life. And I was blown away, and it affected me immensely. And it literally was the catalyst for what you see today. And so the big communal tables that you see in both our locations in Virginia Beach and Fairfax, that's the inspiration. And that's what we're trying to kind of get a little bit of here.
And it's a perfect style for a beer hall like you have here in Fairfax. This FFX location is the new location,
yes,
correct? And it's awesome. The aesthetic, you guys can see it on the camera. It's phenomenal. And I did also like the fact that you named your brewery Commonwealth, but you're a North Carolina guy. This is an NC State grad we've got here, but he loves the Commonwealth so much, just like the rest of us Hokie fans, that he named his brewery after it. And I appreciate that. So let's go to the collaboration question I wanted to ask you. So many breweries do this. How important is it collaborating? Is it something that you value, or is it something you think, we don't really need to do that here at Commonwealth?
I think you can exist doing it or not doing it, but I find it to be incredibly enriching, both personally and professionally, to do it. One, I think breweries contain some of the coolest people on the planet. They're just really fun. They're very diverse. There's so many interesting people, especially internationally. It's insane. And so to get to go into their spaces and see how they operate and meet their teams and taste their products, and they're just as passionate as we are, I love that. And so I will always do that. And I think it's something we focused on from the beginning, was a desire to do that. And so we've done collaborations, across the country, and we've done quite a number of them overseas as well. And as I alluded to earlier, we're gonna have a big season of it this year too, and I'm really excited to travel.
Yeah. Speaking of collaborations, you've got some Hokies here, myself included. Hardywood has done a Fighting Hokies lager in association with the school. I'm not saying you'd have to use that name. We talked about the USPTO earlier.
Sure.
Would you ever brew a VT-inspired beer in hopes of selling, like you put some orange and maroon on a can, you might sell a lot of beer?
Sure. No, absolutely. Yeah. We've considered that. I'm still working on the idea, though.
Yeah.
Like, I want it to be a real winner.
And I can help you with that because you said flagship beers earlier.
Yeah.
Flagship is what our coach, Brent Pry, has called our program, the flagship of the state, kind of sticking it to UVA and JMU and all the rest.
Nice.
I think a flagship lager or a flagship Friday IPA would be something that we could get behind. But if nothing else, maybe some game watches or something like that where
For sure.
Commonwealth is involved. We could be here hanging out. I think that would be fun. But
I think it'd be great. We actually just installed a laser projector with a 130-inch screen just for that kind of thing. So we'd welcome that.
We
Love
like
have
to
you
hear
guys.
that. I asked you about starting up in the business. If you had to give advice to someone getting into the brewing industry, what would it be? And would it be don't?
It would be be patient.
Okay.
And it would be have a thick skin. Have a real thick skin. You're going to run into an awful lot.
Because I would imagine
headwinds.
It's very hard to brew a very good beer. And you probably didn't get it right your first time.
That is just the first hurdle. That's literally the very first one. I mean, don't get in the business if you haven't figured that out. Please don't. Too many people have. But it's just there's so many things that come at you as a small business owner, trying to finance, find good people, find the space, afford everything. It's a lot. And so I would encourage someone, if they're really considering it, to absolutely not take it lightly, to do their homework in detail. You can never go into enough detail. And, I wish them the best.
Well, as we kind of close out here, I want to ask you, I saw on your website, you got a ton of events coming up. Is there anything big you want to talk about? We got St. Patrick's Day weekend happening right now.
We've got St. Patty's Day weekend coming up. So that's always a big one. We also have Run the World event, which is, female entrepreneurs. We're trying to celebrate them. We're doing a beer for them called Run the World. It's an amazing beer with lychee. And a portion of the proceeds will go to support and sponsor
that's awesome.
Female-owned businesses. And all the vendors that are here that day participating in the event will all be female-owned, locally owned businesses.
That's sweet, man. Well, Jeramy, I can't thank you enough for being here. This has been a pleasure. And
thank you.
I know I'm going to be back here soon. I don't live in the D.C. area, but I'm here to see some friends. And, coming to Commonwealth has convinced me I need to come back more often. This is seriously, the beer is phenomenal. Love the new setup, and hopefully we'll do this again sometime.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. See you guys.
I'm going to do a quick ad read, but I need my guy Ed to come up here because we're going to do some basketball talk. But I did want to tell you guys, the 2 Deep Hokies Under the Influence podcast is brought to you by Roback. Roback is the performance activewear designed for those who crave activity. You guys know Roback. Guess what kind of shirt they have, Ed? They have the Commonwealth. That's right. The same brewery we are at. That's what they named their shirt. The white shirt with the maroon Virginias. Ed has one. I got one. Great shirt. You can get it for 20% off using code 2DeepVT. So go to roback.com, load up your cart, use code 2DeepVT. Not only do they have the polos, they got the quarter zip, which is called the Berg. They've got joggers, tennis skirts, all the good stuff. But like I said, 2DeepVT, 20% off. It's loud in here. I'm trying to concentrate.
You're good.
Ed knows what I'm talking about. Load up your cart, 2DeepVT, for 20% off. I did want to take a quick beer break. What are you drinking, Ed? Are you having some lager?
It's a lager. I don't know which one.
Oh, I think you got the easy lager.
I might have got the pool noodle or something like that. I don't know. It's good, though. I like it a lot.
I'm still drinking the Crispy Boy here. Thank you to Jeramy. He was awesome on the interview. And Ed, I was telling him, stay within an inch and a half of the mic.
Okay.
Because it is loud.
Sounds good.
You look good. I love the quarter zip you got on. That thing is fresh. We're going to do some basketball stuff with Ed. He does the Hokie Hoops pod with Mike McDaniel, who I did invite to come out tonight. But
yeah, he's on dad duty.
That's okay. We are operating under the assumption in the NCAA tournament that Liz Kitley will not be available. That's how we're going to do this podcast. I think everyone knows that to be the case, but it hasn't been said because we're still waiting for Selection Sunday, and we don't want a Notre Dame situation. This week, we were number 13 in the AP poll. We dropped 2 spots there, which was to be expected after the loss in the ACC tournament. 24-7 on the year, 19th in the net. But bracketology has us at a number 4. We are currently hosting. How do you feel about that? Do you think you comfortable that we will keep that number 4?
I was just telling Dan off camera, like, if we had lost to Miami, I wouldn't have felt really good about the ability to stay on that 4 line. I think that win was huge to keep us hosting a game, and that's going to be really important, in tournament time. Blacksburg makes a difference. Castle makes a difference. That's going to be huge. So I'm optimistic that the bracketology they're all correct. I've seen a couple different ones, both on the 4 line. I think one was against Utah, it was the 5 seed, and
that was ESPN. Yep.
And then the other one I think was Colorado. So 2 really good Pac-12 teams that would be coming across the country to play in Blacksburg. But I'm optimistic that they're right and we'll stay on the 4 line. I think taking the ACC regular season champ and dropping them out of a position to be hosting would be kind of criminal.
Because it was the best conference in female college basketball.
I mean, I think they're going to get 9 bids or something ridiculous like that. So I think having the ACC champ not hosting would be pretty crazy. But you lost 3 of your last 4. Obviously, extenuating circumstances.
If they do what the college football committee did, like losing your best player, but they don't know that.
Yeah,
and that's why Kenny and them have been so mum's the word.
We'll see what the status of Liz is. Again, kind of expecting it to be somewhat similar to the ACC tournament. Maybe she can get out there and play a little bit. Who knows? But as far as the 4 seed's concerned, I'm optimistic. I think we'll be all right there.
Let's go to on the court and start with Liz's replacement, Clara Strock. That's at least who primarily has been trying to replace Liz Kitley, because no one can replace what Liz Kitley can do. Clara had a nice first half against Miami, kind of went quiet in the second half, and I don't know if that was a reflection of the defense or the style of the game or what. But our other option, Rose Michaud, she played about 13 minutes, and that's all we can really expect from her.
Yeah.
At least in terms of effectiveness. I think you want to get Clara playing. She's our up-and-coming stud, right? Yep. We're all excited about her. What do we miss more out of Liz Kitley? Is it the offense or the defense? Because to me, it seems like we miss her offense a lot more.
It's both. It's absolutely both. I mean, you can't replace an All-American with a freshman. I don't care how good the freshman is. I think this 2-week stretch off to get Clara Strock and the other freshmen up to speed, get Rose back into a position where she's comfortable, because she hadn't really played much since like December. Yeah. So to get the 2 of them up to speed in the offense and the defense, it's going to be huge. It's going to be massive for this team. I think you can still run a lot of the same stuff you ran with Liz to an extent. Obviously, it's not going to be as successful. But in order to get other players opportunities and shots, you can stick with some of those basics in the offense. You saw them do it a little bit against Notre Dame, getting Clara some of those similar looks to Liz Kitley. But I think this 2-week stretch to get the Rose and Clara up to speed offensively and defensively with Matilda Eck and Georgia and Kayla King is going to be massive for this team.
Yeah, hold that thought, Ed, because I'm 32%, which the Notre Dame game was 30. Like, that's incredibly low. Kayla King, relatively cold this season. Even as of late, I know she had a little bit of an injury scare, but like, she's been a tremendous shooter for this team.
Yeah.
And this season, that really hasn't been the case. And then let's go to Baker. She's a good shooter.
Very good.
Just 3 of 13 since UVA. Matilda Eck, 0 points in the last 3 games. I don't know what's going on there. And Georgia, while an amazing player, we know and love Georgia, and she did a great job of getting to the rim and getting free throws against, was it Miami? It doesn't matter. But she can struggle from the field at times as well. So you talked a little bit about Kenny's schematics. Is there something he can do to kind of help these girls out? Or are you just kind of like hoping like Coach Kenny figures it out these 2 weeks?
I don't really think there's anything you can do to fix good shooters missing good looks. There's nothing you can do there. Like, this happens on the men's side all the time. Like, we just saw, like, Hunter Couture struggled to shoot. Well, if I need a shot, I'm letting Hunter Couture take it 100 times out of 100. Sometimes you just miss good looks. Matilda Eck's a phenomenal shooter. I don't expect that to continue.
And she did get a lot of rebounds. In those games that she didn't score, she was contributing in other ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't expect her to continue to struggle from the field at all. I think the 2 weeks off, a lot of stuff happened. You know, you lose to Virginia, Liz goes down, and you got to go play to Greensboro. Emotional times are for everybody involved.
It's so
There's a lot going on. So I think, you know, the 10-day break here, or it's a little bit longer than 10 days, will help the shooting woes as well. But I'll take Kenny Brooks with 2 weeks on prep. I'll let Matilda X shoot as many threes as she wants. I mean, she's a career 35-plus three-point shooter. Karis Baker, for most of the year, was shooting in the mid-40s from three. Kayla King, we know what she can do. And then Georgia, I mean, it's hard to be too nitpicky with her.
You can't. I know.
I mean, she's shooting 27 times against Notre Dame. I think her last 3 games she had 39, 27, and 24. She's got a lot on her shoulders in those games. So I'm looking for ways to kind of take some of that pressure off of her and allow her to get her shooting percentage back up as a result of less pressure on her.
Think about how we felt after the UVA game and then times it by 10, right, for the girls. Yeah. And then they got to come out of that and then play in the ACC tournament. So dealing with a lot is probably an understatement. I mean, we saw Liz's expression when she came back to the bench, which kudos to her for doing that, because that was definitely like a strength for the team move.
100%.
But depending on the seed, I want to ask you about the ceiling of this team. Well, maybe not the ceiling. How do you feel like we'll fare in the NCAA? If we get that home hosting for the first 2 rounds, do you think you feel good about our chances to get to the Sweet 16?
You have to view this team now like a 4 seed. I think most of us throughout the year probably viewed this team through the lens of a 1 or a 2 seed. And then, you know, in that instance, you're getting to the Elite 8 or even the Final 4. I think assuming Liz does not play, you have to view this team now through the lens of a 4 seed. Success for a 4 seed is getting out of their bracket, getting to the Sweet 16, and then you run into a 1.
Right.
So from that perspective, I would say getting to the Sweet 16 without Liz Kitley would be really, really impressive. I will add, though, I'm not in the business of putting a ceiling on Coach Brooks. I'm not in the business of putting a ceiling on Georgia Amore. And we've got, if you count Carly Wenzel as a freshman, you've got four freshmen who are all top 100 recruits to go along with one of the best players in the country and 2 really, really good basketball players in Kayla King and Matilda X. So, like I said, I'm not in the business of putting a ceiling on that. But I will say, you know, you have to look at this team now as a 4 seed, not what was a potential 1 or 2 without Liz Kitley. So a 4 seed, get out of Blacksburg. That'd be really cool.
How does your opinion change if we don't host?
If we don't host, 1, that's completely ridiculous on the NCAA's part.
I like that answer.
2, I mean, I guess it depends. You're probably a 5. So you're going to play somewhere else, which stinks because Castle's a huge advantage.
Yeah.
And you're running into probably a 4. So, again, you could still get out of there and try to get to the Sweet 16.
But that team is going to be 4
but it's
or
a good
5
team
on our level. It's going to be a good team. But
if you look at the 4s and the 5s and even some of the 6s projected, it's Louisville, it's Duke, teams we've seen all year who are really good. Utah, Colorado, it's really good teams. So women's college basketball is really deep right now. You know, top 25, top 30, top 35 are all really deep. Again, I'd be shocked if we're not a 4 seed and not hosting. That'd be kind of criminal in my opinion. But again, Sweet 16, I would be pretty impressed. I think that'd be awesome.
We'll stick with that.
Yeah, we'll stick with that.
This is a good one. Which 1 seed would you want to see in our region?
Yeah, I saw this on the
yeah, like
sheet.
I prepped that a little bit on some of these, but we got South Carolina. I am assuming it's not them.
Not them.
Iowa, Stanford, USC. Those are the other projected 1 seeds, and then you could throw LSU in there, Texas, Ohio State.
The answer is obviously different without Liz. With Liz Kitley, we can play anybody in the country. I'll take my chances against anybody in the country. If Liz is not able to play, what'd you say again? Iowa,
Stanford, USC.
Of those 4, I'll say Iowa or USC.
I think Iowa's the choice.
Because they're guard heavy and Kayla King can guard anybody. So they're guard heavy. You let Kayla try to slow down Caitlin Clark or Juju Watkins. Stanford and USC are more – well, USC is just good, period, flat out. Front court, back court, bench. Good, yeah. But Stanford's front court dominant with Cameron Brink and I forget the other girl's name off the top of my head. So without Liz, I wouldn't really want to run into them. But the guard dominant teams, I'll play them. I mean, I'll let Kayla King go out and guard somebody and let the chips fall where they may in that point.
And The other thing is, one, yes, I totally agree with you, the matchup sense. But I can be fine losing to Caitlin Clark.
Yeah.
Like, I really can. So we'll go with that too. Men's hoops, quickly. We're going to do some men before we bring on the two Dans and talk a little football. They flamed out in the first game of the ACC tournament against Florida State. The second half didn't go great. Finished 10-10 in the conference on the year. Top 60 Ken Palm team, though, and had a couple of really nice wins against Iowa State and that blasting of UVA, which we'll remember for a long time. I hate to do this to you, Ed, but what's your general commentary on the season as a whole?
If you told me that Rodney Rice wasn't going to play a game for you and that Mekhi Long was not going to really play any conference games for you, and we finished 10-10, I wouldn't be that upset. Now, that being said, they had a lot of chances to win games. Both Miami games, both Florida State games, they won one of those. That South Carolina game early in the year that we all thought was a bad loss, which turned out was not a bad loss. But yeah, that's a 2-point loss. The Miami games had a chance to win both of them. Florida State on the road had a chance to win that one. You take one or two of those, and this is a fringe tournament team. So it was really thin margins. We probably all knew that when Rodney went down. He didn't go down. He just went home. When Rodney left, we all probably knew that the margins were going to be really thin. It played out that way on the court. A lot of really close games that you lost on thin margins. And it's thin margins in that building right now for the program. And as a result, you saw 18-13 and 10-10. I mean,
and my perspective, and I've followed Virginia Tech basketball for a long time. And at this point, I'm not as close to it as you are, but I fancy myself a pretty big diehard Virginia Tech basketball fan. And to me, this team, it wasn't very good. And I don't know if it's a reflection of the talent, so to speak. So that could be a little bit of a detriment to the roster building, but I think it's a credit to the coaching.
Yeah.
Because I just don't think this team had anybody spectacular. I love Sean. I think he's a really good player and probably our best player. Tyler Nickel came on a little bit. Some of the more like glue guys, so to speak, they're solid players. Elisha Poteet, Lynn Kidd really improved this year. But was there anyone that nationally anyone's talking about? No, not really. And they went
Sean.
10-10 in the ACC. Sean, potentially.
Yeah, Sean. Sean's a really good basketball player. I want to hammer that point home. I'll look at the camera. Sean Padula is a really good basketball player. I think he finished the year averaging like 16-5 in the ACC, with an incredibly high usage rate. He's just a really good basketball player. But yeah, you're right.
I mean,
man.
if you can score 30 multiple times in the season, like you're really freaking good at college basketball.
Yeah, he's a really, really good basketball player. But you're right, man. I mean, like you look at the whole team, like, you know, your two other primary, I guess, Hunter, outside of Hunter, your two other wings are a sophomore and MJ Collins, a true sophomore, and
who did improve a lot.
Oh yeah, I'll talk about that in a second. And Tyler Nickel, who barely played his freshman year, so he's kind of like a freshman sophomore hybrid. And they both got better and better and better and better as the year went on. I loved where their games finished. I mean, they both played phenomenal in Capital One Arena the other day.
They did.
They're both fantastic the other day. So I think you're spot on, man. Like the coaching job was really good. You got a really good year out of the 5 spot with the combination of Len Kidd and Elijah Poteet. But those guys, man, they've been working their butts off, developing with Ace Custis and just getting better. And that's what this program needs to be right now. We're not going to go out and splash in the portal for some big, multi-6-figure guy. That's not who we are. We're going to develop kids. They're going to get better. And in year 3 and year 4 of their careers, they're going to be really good basketball players. You saw Sean Padula in year 3 this year, really good basketball player. The potential steps that MJ and Tyler can make going into next year.
Tyler's upside is
NBA player. I mean,
really?
I compare him to Kevin Herter at Maryland. He reminded me a lot of Kevin Herter this year. Kevin Herter as a freshman was Tyler Nickel this year. He's 6'7", can shoot the cover off the ball.
All-time leading scorer in Virginia high school basketball.
And as the year went on, he added the ability to go to the rim and finish around contact. I think he's a really, really good player, and he's in a really good spot in Mike Young's offense, which knows how to get good shooters, good looks. So I'm really high on Tyler Nickel, but overall, yeah, really, really good coaching job.
Good coaching job.
I think if Rodney and actually forget Rodney, if Mekhi Long plays, you probably win 1 or 2 more games and you have a shot in the tournament. Mekhi Long's knee injury really set this team back because, again, thin margins. So
yeah, and so we think the coach is good, and
100%.
we're not gonna hammer Mike Young.
100%.
And you've a huge Mike Young supporter right here,
100%.
and I am also a big Mike Young supporter. However, is there something to be said for does he need to reevaluate how he handles his roster?
I don't know because you can't
like. Do you view the Rodney Rice thing as kind of a freak thing right before the season?
Yeah. I view that as a weird situation. Like, I mean, if Rodney was going to leave, Rodney should have left when Mike Jones left.
That way we could have filled his spot.
And that way we would have had time to fill the spot. But when the kid says he's going to be there and then he leaves, 3 weeks before the season starts, you can't do anything. You're screwed. Yeah. I mean, you're caught with your pants down at that point.
Terrible time.
So Rodney's timing of him leaving, Rodney leaving stinks. His timing made it even worse. I view that as a freak thing. I don't really know how you can control that. Like, a kid tells you in the summertime he's not leaving to follow his coach, and then he does just that. By all accounts, he was going to go to Maryland, and now we're hearing he might go to ODU. I mean, it seems like he's just dead set on following his coach around. So from like a roster management perspective, I don't really know how you deal with that. Think back a year prior, the Darius Maddox situation combined with the Rodney Rice multiple injury situation. I don't know how you deal with that. I mean, those are 2 4-star guards who left or didn't play.
If you break each situation down, there's a way to explain it away.
Yeah.
I think for the fan base, we have these high-profile guys coming in terms of a recruiting ranking, and we can't manage to keep them, and it's frustrating. And the fans find it frustrating, and then we see a non-tournament team, and that frustration builds. But I think, and I know Ed's of this opinion, that Mike Young's doing everything he can other than maybe giving those guys more playing time right off the bat. Now, Rodney got hurt, so he didn't even have a chance to get playing time. But
Rodney got hurt, and then he got hurt again.
Who is on his 5th team right now and played well today, but literally on his 4th or 5th team.
I hate that example because if you're going to blame Virginia Tech for not having Joe Bamaso while he's succeeding, then you have to blame GW, and you have to blame Oklahoma, and you have to blame every other stop along the way. Outside of him, though, I mean, what do you point to? You point to Jalen Cone, who went down a level, played at Northern Arizona, and just succeeded there, but went down a level. Darius Maddox went down a level, but also bigger piece for him was he came back closer to home. I haven't seen anybody really leave and go succeed at a Virginia Tech level, a Power 5, Power 6 level. That hasn't happened yet. I mean, the closest you got is Joe Bamaso at VCU, and he's on his 4th school in 4 years.
Sorry, I got some kids screaming behind me. But yes, and we'll move on from that. But part of the conversation, I think that most of our Tech fans don't know, is that there's a certain financial investment that goes behind every basketball program. And the women, very well funded. Our women's team. And Title IX has something to do with that and all the rest of it. You have to.
I don't even know if it's that. I just think there's a really awesome group of donors that have made it their mission and their passion to fund women's basketball.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's a really passionate group that has made that their stance, and they want to help this team and Coach Brooks, and they've invested in something that clearly is worth investing in. Coach Brooks is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I don't think it has anything to do with Title IX necessarily, because I don't think there's any Title IX implications on NIL. But yeah, they've made it their mission to do this. I mean, LSU has a donor doing the same thing. That's why you've been seeing LSU perform on and off the court the way they have in women's basketball. They've got donors who have decided they're going to be good at women's basketball, and that's what they're doing. So, but yeah, continue your question. Sorry.
Well, and what I was getting to is, like, we've seen football make an improvement.
Yes.
With a substantial financial commitment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And when Buzz Williams was here, I felt like he demanded a lot out of the administration.
Yes.
He wore them out.
Yes.
Without a doubt.
Yes.
But he demanded a lot in terms of recruiting funding, whether it be, fuel money, jet money to get here.
Staff budget. Yep. All of it.
Does Mike Young need to be more assertive, or do we owe Mike Young a little bit to be more competitive?
I'll answer that very simply.
Yeah, because we don't.
Before NIL, Mike Young came in. They got better in year one of an entirely new roster outside of Wabisa Beatty and Landers Nolly. Entirely new roster. Hunter Couture had like his lacrosse player flow on that team and looked like a high schooler. And that team got better as the year went on. Year two, they make the tournament, right? And year three, they won the ACC and made the tournament. And then NIL struck and COVID struck and all these things happened that are outside of, an old ball coach from Radford's control. But I've talked to Billy and Pat about this, and I think this staff is so good that, say, if you fund them at a tier 3 ACC level, you'll get a tier 2 result, et cetera, et cetera. So right now, I don't know the specific numbers, but from everything you read on the internet and Twitter and whatnot, we're towards the bottom, but you're getting a middle-of-the-road result. Imagine if we were funded at the middle of the road. Where do we get the result? Like, how much better is that? So that's kind of my thought, is that pre-NIL, when NIL wasn't the way it is right now. I mean, NIL was starting around then, but when NIL wasn't the way it was right now, we made 2 tournaments, won an ACC title with the staff. And the way it even is right now, we're outperforming our financial investments, it seems like to me. So I would love to answer your question, do we owe them? Yes, I think we do, because, man, these guys can really coach ball.
Yes, and so I think and my final question was just, do you still believe in Mike Young? I think you kind of speak for yourself in what you've said already. Like, I wish the team was better. We all wish the team was better. I wish they had performed better with what they have. However, I'm not sure it's an even playing field right now in the ACC.
It's not.
And that's one thing we do some of these shows to tell you the hard facts, and I just don't know if Mike Young's a great coach, and I feel like we are lucky to have him, and I think people need to realize that. The idea that we fire Mike Young after this year, which I'm not the first one
literally
to
insane.
mention that idea.
That's literally insane.
It's been said. It's talked about. Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, man.
Because he is a good basketball player.
Man.
And this isn't a Mike Young PSA. It's just this is what's going on.
Yeah,
we overachieved this year. With the loss of Rodney Rice, I think this team overachieved.
I would
Even
say so.
With the Miami loss.
You lose your, projected top 3 player on your team, and you finish the way you finish. I would agree with you, yes.
Yeah. All right, Ed, that's going to do it for your segment. You're off the hook. Go enjoy some beer.
Cool, man.
I'm going to bring on some of the Dans to talk some football.
Well,
cheers, buddy.
Dan Visionary is getting a beer over there. Okay. I see him. Right. So
we'll get
I'll
Treadmill.
Get Treadmill
we need
over
you
here.
over here. Welcome. This is Treadmill Horse I've got on the show. I may refer to you as Treadmill as we go through this interview when other Dan comes over.
Treadmill's great. I love it.
Because it'll just be easier than calling you both Dan.
I get it. Easier for the listener, too. So.
But if you don't know who this guy is, at Treadmill Horse on Twitter, the leading source for all Twitter content for Virginia Tech. I think Tally was praising you last year, the spring game. We had him on at our spring game pregame show, which was awesome. And we plan on doing it again this year. Maybe at Tots this time. Could be a lot of fun.
I'll bring a top shelf rail with me.
You got it. If you haven't heard it, go back and listen to last year's episode from the spring game pregame show where Tally is just kind of clowning on the top shelf rail that Dan was talking about. It's very funny. But I will start with some news and notes while we wait for Terrordome Dan to get here. Kelly Lawson, he is going to miss spring practice. I think he is dealing with a little bit of a cleanup from a surgery, so he's not going to be around, which is detrimental because we've always been hoping for big things from Kelly. And, not being able to play the spring when you're trying to develop him, that could be tough. Montavious Cunningham, the latest news on him, the guy who came in from Middle Tennessee. Grab that chair, Dan. Throw the purse aside. Yep. Montavious Cunningham's going to start at guard. Listen, it's tough hosting and producing at the same time. These guys know what I'm talking about. Here, take this out of the thing because we're gonna pass the mic back and forth between these two guys, as we kind of go through some of these football questions. But last note I was going to get to, other than Cunningham starting at guard rather than tackle, which when we had French on the show, he said he thought Montavious was a tackle because that's what he's always played, starting at guard. Maybe some versatility, maybe that's where I'll stay. But the last thing was Gunnar Brewer was hired as our director of high school relations, taking the position of Coach Furby. Is that right? I might be getting that. Ferb, yep. And Gunnar Brewer has a really good reputation in college football. In fact, I think I saw on Twitter that Trey Turner said that was the favorite coach that recruited him. And did you talk to Gunnar recently?
Yeah, I interviewed him yesterday, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I hopped on it quick. And Dax also said it was his favorite recruiter ever. Yeah. And Gunnar, man, that dude is he's a firecracker. Like, he's a burst of personality, and like, you talk to that man and you just want to like have a beer with that man. Like, I can understand why like kids want to play for that dude or like come play where that dude is, because he is like the same as Cheetah, personality wise. Like, they're just very full of personality,
a lot of motivation,
magnetic charisma type deal. Yeah, 1,000%.
And Gunnar has worked for all kinds of schools. I mean, he was at Maryland, which this is the second coach now we've taken from Maryland. If you want to add in Coach Brooks, Louisville, Philadelphia Eagles, my very own. He coached for them. Back in the day, we're talking Marshall, Oklahoma State, like Randy Moss, Justin Blackman, Tutu Atwell at Louisville. Like, he's coached a lot of good receivers, and it's weird because that's not his role. But he did have kind words for Fontel Mines. Is that right?
Yeah, he loves Fontel. He's a big Fontel fan, and so am I.
Yeah, Fontel's the man, and we are lucky to have retained him last year and keep him this year. I want to talk a little bit about spring practice because it's starting today. We're all juiced up about it. Everyone's got their lies being told. It's, he's got to win 8. He's got to win 8, all this stuff. Everyone talks about the depth on offense. I want to go to the defense real quick, guys, because there are some question marks here. But what about the defense? And Dan, number one, I'll start with you first since you got the mic in your hand. What are you excited about on the defense this upcoming season?
The trenches. We got Copeland in the weight room putting up damn near 700 pounds.
That was crazy.
Sam Brumfield looking like a statue out there, sculpted up, dude. Looking, and at number 3.
He's got enough weight on him to play Mike?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think this is probably the most. Dax was great, especially from a mental standpoint. But I think maybe Sam, some of those physical characteristics that Dax might have not had, I think Sam has those. And I know that's really high praise because Dax has a very high mentality. Yeah.
Dax was big.
But I think Sam is going to be nasty.
Okay. He's got, the one thing that concerns me is about Brumfeld, and I am excited about getting a true Mike. Because we didn't really have a true Mike last year with Tisdale trying to fill in.
Right.
Jaden Keller maybe having started at a will, and Sam at least has that. But he's coming from a lower league. Dan, number 2, if I had to ask you what you're excited about on the defense this upcoming year, what would you say?
I agree with Dan, number 1. It's definitely the trenches.
It's those new DTs that are coming
it's
in.
Aeneas
APR.
Peebles. It's Copeland. I think they're going to tear it up. They're going to open up room for APR to just go nuts, going after the quarterback. Another thing is, I don't think we saw the best of our linebacker group last year.
I think that's an understatement.
Yeah. I think they can take it up another level. Even at the end of the year, even in the UVA game, even the Tulane game and the Military Bowl, I still didn't think that we saw them all the way up to their potential. So going into next year, that's an area I'm really looking at. I'm looking at that position group. Can we get the most out of Lawson? Can we get the most out of Keontae Jenkins?
Are we ever going to see it from Jaden Keller, the McDonald brother?
The whole group, everybody. Yeah. I'm excited to see Brumfield. He looks the part.
He does look the part.
Yes. More so than anyone who's been here in probably the last 10 years.
He's cut up.
Yeah. So that's really exciting to me, but honestly, I just need to see it on the field.
that's the tough thing about linebacker is so much of it is about instincts. That winter workouts, you can be a workout warrior. It doesn't mean you're going to be a great linebacker, and because that's kind of what I think Jaden Keller is. And I'm not trying to hammer the kid or Kelly Lawson. Kelly Lawson, freak of nature. He was on Bruce Feldman's freak list last year. He's got to figure out how to be a linebacker. And so him missing spring practice is a bummer. And that would be my concern. Let's move to the DBs. How comfortable are you with this safety group? Because last year we saw Mose Phillips have to come in as a true freshman. Jalen Jones comes in from the other side of the football to play safety. If Stroman's healthy, are you like good with safety? I think we're like fine there, or do you think we need to bring someone else into the portal?
So, yeah, Stroman, I feel 100% good on it with. Like, I think he played really well last year. Again, just like the linebacker group, I think he can still take it up another notch.
Yeah.
But I was really happy with the way he played. Jalen Jones started to come into his own toward the end of the season. He was starting to look better, and I'm excited to see his growth and development going into next year. And I just think Mose Phillips just has a high ceiling, you know. Like, I felt like he looked like a kid his freshman year who had been in a college program for 3 years, and that's coming in as a true freshman out of high school. So given all those things, I think we'll be okay. I mean, I don't think it's going to be perfect all year, and I still think that group has room to grow, but I feel pretty good about it.
All right, let me ask Terrordome here. You are big on Lovett at corner, right? And we've got Delane and we've got Strong. If we were to kind of move Strong around and play him in the nickel, which I think they might want to toy with, how good do you feel about Johnson or Lovett playing on the outside?
I feel like they got really valuable reps last year. And not only did they get the reps, but when they had the reps, they held their own. And Lovett had a pick in the Military Bowl. I don't care what anybody says. He picked that ball. And he's a freak athlete. And he's got it here, and that's what matters. And the same way with Braylon Johnson. Just comes from a pedigree. His dad is a coach. His dad is very smart. His dad has raised him the correct way. And that means, you know, he's very much a student of the game.
Yes.
He's very disciplined. Like, that Highland Springs team was like a mini college football team. Like, they're well-oiled.
D1 players.
Well-oiled. And I think if you got to call his number 8's going to show up. Number 1's going to show up. If there's a position group on the field I don't worry about, it's the corners.
Yeah.
The Cheetahs. And you brought up Quentin Reddish, but Quentin Reddish is going to be great at safety.
Well, that's what makes me feel better about safety, too, is that we have Reddish waiting in the wings. I was listening to the guys on the Inside the Tunnel pod, and they're like, we may need to go out and get a safety in the portal. I don't think that's at the top of my list. I think there would be some other areas. Not
because at the very least you can move Mansour back, and then I feel pretty good about Lovett or Braylon playing. We're very deep in both of those rooms, and people can say whatever. Like, I know some people have like issues with Prelude. I don't know why, but I mean, Shamari Connor got drafted in the 4th round off of this dude's tutelage, so I feel pretty good about Yeah, as a Broncos fan, much to my dismay, but good for him. Yeah,
I'm not a huge Chiefs guy either, but he did win a Super Bowl. All right, let's go back to the offense, and I'm going to ask both of you guys this question. We got the wide receivers coming back. We got Tootin coming back. Gallo decides to come back. Every offensive lineman, even though that unit struggled, they got better throughout the year. They're back. This offensive unit could be really good in 2024. And when it came down to it at the end of the year last year, 2023's offense on a per-play basis finished 50th in the country. That's the second highest since Logan Thomas left school, since the 2011 season. That's crazy to think about.
Insane.
How good can this offense be in 2024? And you can go first since you got the mic.
I mean, dude, like, if you think about it, like, you put Montavious Cunningham at right guard, that frees up Brody to maybe play left guard or, like, at least sub in over at left guard. Chaplin's got left tackle down. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what Parker's going to look like. It hasn't been amazing.
Cunningham could end up switching.
But he could.
Yeah.
I just think that they got options. And then you got Lamar Law and Gunnar Givens. I don't know what that's going to look like on offensive line. It's a hard position to switch to.
That Gunnar Givens was indeed on offensive line.
It's a hard position to switch to, but it gives us more athletic options. I feel like if that offensive line is even 10% more improved and the holes are just half an inch bigger for Tootin, and Drones doesn't have to run it all the time,
which we don't want.
Right. Dude, we're looking at some freaky stuff, and I think we're going to be very, very happy in Lane Stadium this year.
Give it to this guy. And again, you take in the framework of what we've done. Should we kind of like pull ourselves back from too much excitement, or are you feeling a top 40, a top 25 offense in terms of yards per play?
Well, one thing I want your listeners to remember, after the Marshall game, I think we were sub 120 in the country in offense. By the end of the season, we were up to 50th. So that's an incredible turnaround. And that's in the last 8 games of the season, which is unbelievable. So given that, and given the fact that we get Brent Davis for another year, I think he's going to add in more option concepts into the offense. The fact that we get a second year of Tootin, we get a second year of a Ron Crook offensive line. All of those things, and not to mention...
Which I'm very excited about the Ron Crook aspect.
I mean, everywhere he's been, it's always been a little bit of a slow start, but in year 2, year 3, year 4, that's when he really starts getting it going. So I'm excited to see what happens there. And then not to mention the deepest group on the team, which is the wide receivers.
Brent Pry was talking about the backups on the Sons of Saturday pod.
So I'm just saying the offensive staff has a lot to work with there. So I think it's not at all out of the question they'll be top 50, and it's just a matter of where. Yeah. Top 40, top 30, I don't know, but it'll be good.
Clearly, we know last year we played a lot of the bottom teams in the ACC, but that doesn't mean you didn't put up the stats. Right. You still got to get those balls to the guys. You still got to get those runs, and we're working with an offensive line that was learning on the job under their coach that just got there in spring.
Hey, we spent a couple years playing the bottom feeders of the ACC and not getting any results.
You're damn right.
Good teams beat the hell out of bad teams. Good teams beat the hell out of bad teams.
That's true. And that's what I always say. And the other thing was, we didn't just beat the bad teams. Like, it wasn't we won by 1 point. We kicked their ass. And that is the difference that people tend to forget with last year.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Is this our deepest wide receiver room in 20 years? Since Eddie Royal, David Clowney, Josh Morgan, Josh Hyman?
King, Royal, Hyman. Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's the one. Was it 05? 05, I think, was our deepest, if you include the tight ends. And the only person we lost was Daquan Wright, but the fact that you got all those guys coming back and you add in a Keelan Adams, Takey Heath, who they talked about a ton, Xavier Turner Bradshaw, who we saw made some big plays.
And Nick Gallo is going to help block. He's going to be great blocking, and he does have decent hands. I think Kyron will probably like him pretty well.
That's another thing. Alex and Andrew Alex, Matesi, and them were talking about Doug Bowman on the inside the tunnel, was that they think maybe we need a tight end because we lost Daquan. We don't have that receiving option. Do we need it? If you're getting Tootin passes out of the backfield or Malachi Thomas passes out of the backfield and all those wide receivers or Xavier Turner, do we need a pass reception tight end? I don't know if we do.
So one thing I'll say about that, at some point you have too many playmakers just because you got to get everybody the ball. If you have too many, if you keep bringing guys out of the portal, these guys aren't going to get touches. You want to make sure the Tootins of the world, the Daquan Feltons, the Ollie Jenninses of the world, they all get touches.
Cannot have a game where he doesn't touch the ball
Absolutely.
15 times.
100%.
We saw that. I think it was the Marshall game, or there was 1 or 2 games where Tootin didn't touch the ball enough, and I'm like, he's our best player. We got to get him the ball. But I think that's going to about do it. And thank you guys so much for being here. This was a lot of fun, and it's loud as hell in here if people don't know from listening, but you guys are always awesome. We're going to do the spring game pregame show again.
1 month.
Both of these guys should be there. They're hammering me about details. We're going to get them out. I'm talking to Billy Ray. We're going to figure it all out. Hopefully we'll be in front of the Tots flag. That's what we want. but we'll see. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed the interview with Jeramy. Hope you enjoyed the interview with Ed, and of course these two, Dans. And until next time, go Hokies.
Hokies.